Welcome to FoxLingo. Today's topic is how to correct your pronunciation on your own.
Which is a lot harder than it sounds.
Oh, totally. I mean, imagine power walking down a busy suburban street, right?
Yeah.
Just loudly talking to yourself in Arabic, looking absolutely unhinged to everyone around you.
All completely unhinged.
Right. But then realizing this embarrassing public spectacle is, actually the ultimate secret to flawless fluency. Today we're doing a deep dive into some really fascinating video recordings that explain exactly this.
Yeah, it is the absolute pinnacle of looking foolish in order to become brilliant.
And look, looking foolish with languages is something we are intimately familiar with. I mean, do you remember us in middle school?
Oh my gosh, please don't.
We would just strut down the hallways, aggressively butchering basic vocabulary with zero self-awareness.
The overconfidence was staggering.
Yeah.
We memorized the vocabulary list,
Yeah.
so we just naturally assumed the physical production of the sound would, magically follow.
Yeah, and it never does.
Never.
I vividly recall chewing on a mouthful of peanut butter while attempting to speak French, like, bonjour. We had absolutely no concept of how terrible the physical sounds coming out of our mouths actually were.
None at all. We thought we sounded like native Parisians.
Exactly. Which, brings us directly to you, the listener, because you probably intimately know this pain.
Well,
You hit that 500-day streak on your language app, you diligently memorize the verb conjugations, and you feel incredibly prepared.
Right, you're ready to take on the world.
And then you travel, you step up to a cafe counter, open your mouth to order, and the barista just gives you this blank, slightly terrified stare.
Yeah, it's brutal. It is a brutal realization that knowing the grammatical mechanics of a language and physically producing the sounds are two completely disconnected skills.
Totally disconnected. So today we are fixing that disconnect. We are pulling insights from these fantastic video recordings from language specialists who outline a highly physical, slightly bizarre, but wildly effective method to correct your pronunciation completely on your own.
Yeah, and the best part is no tutors. No expensive conversational partners, just you and an audio recording.
Exactly. But the methods they propose in these sources kind of fundamentally flip the traditional way we've been taught to approach a new language, right?
Oh, 180 degrees. Because if the core problem is that knowing grammar doesn't translate to making the right sounds, you have to ask, how do we actually force our mouths to internalize the living language?
Right. Because usually what do? You listen to a recording, hit pause, and try to repeat what you heard.
Right. And the traditional method of practice is actually the culprit here. The issue with that pause and repeat thing is that human short-term auditory memory is, well, it's incredibly fragile.
Really? Just in those few seconds.
Exactly. In the 1 or 2 seconds it takes you to pause and open your mouth, that crisp native sound is already degraded in your mind.
Wow. So you end up comparing your own clumsy pronunciation to a fading, blurry memory of the native speaker rather than the true sound itself.
Spot on. So to solve that auditory decay, the materials introduce a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, what is that exactly?
So you basically eliminate memory from the equation entirely. You listen to a native recording and you repeat it simultaneously.
Wait, simultaneously? At the exact same time?
Yes. You do not wait for a pause. You literally force yourself to speak directly over the native voice as it plays in your ear.
So wait, it's basically like trying to sing along to a really fast rap song where I don't really know the lyrics at first. I mean, I'm just going to trip over my own tongue, right?
At first, yes, totally. Because natural human speech is incredibly fast, and the audio recording is not going to slow down to accommodate your hesitation.
It's just going to keep blasting.
Exactly. It comes in a rigid, fixed pattern.
Okay, I am struggling to see the logic here, though. How does pure chaos actually help a beginner? Because babbling incomprehensibly over an audio track feels like I would just be reinforcing my own bad habits.
I know it seems incredibly counterproductive to just stumble blindly, but it feels chaotic only at first. Think of it less like stumbling through a rap song and more like tracing a complex drawing.
Okay, tracing. I'm with you.
Right, so if you look at a sketch and try to draw it from memory on a blank sheet of paper, your proportions will be completely wrong.
Yeah, it would look like a stick figure.
Right. But if you put tracing paper over the original and force your hand to follow the exact lines, your muscles learn the strict constraints and curves the original artist used.
Oh, I see.
Shadowing is basically physically forcing your vocal cords to trace the native speaker's sound waves in real time.
Ah, okay. So your brain recognizes the immediate gap between the master copy, the audio playing in your ear, and your own clumsy vocal tracing happening at the exact same millisecond.
Yes, and your brain genuinely hates that cognitive dissonance.
It wants them to match.
Exactly. Because the nadir track is rigid and unforgiving, you automatically start tweaking your mouth shape, your rhythm, the length of your vowels, until your voice merges with the recording. You are actively overriding your default speaking patterns by forced pattern matching.
That real-time adaptation actually makes total sense. You just never give your brain a chance to rely on a bad memory.
Exactly.
But, okay, I have a major issue with the practical application the experts suggest in these videos. Language is a cognitive exercise, right? Why do the materials insist on turning this into a cardio workout?
Wow.
Like, how does moving my legs have absolutely any impact on how my tongue forms a vowel? If I sit hunched over my laptop at my desk, aggressively muttering to myself, aren't I accomplishing the same auditory tracing?
You'd think so, but no. The mental speed of shadowing actually requires a physical counterpart to anchor it, because sitting at a desk invites immediate distraction.
I mean, that's fair.
The moment you sit down in a comfortable chair, your focus naturally drifts.
It is so true. My focus shatters the second I sit still.
Yeah.
I'll be like practicing French and suddenly I'm thinking about what I'm having for lunch or mentally drafting a work email.
Right, your brain wanders. So the specific recommendation from the materials is to get outside and walk swiftly. Literally power walking while speaking aloud. The physical momentum keeps your brain locked onto the audio. The creator of this method compares learning to speak a foreign language to playing the flute, fencing with a foil, or shooting an arrow in archery.
Wait, those are entirely physical athletic disciplines.
They are, and what they share is a reliance on baseline physical architecture. In archery, your stance, your shoulder alignment, and your grip must be perfectly dialed in before you even look at the target.
Right, the posture is everything.
Exactly. And language demands the same physiological setup. You need your lungs actively working, your chest open, and full exaggerated articulation. You simply cannot mumble your way to fluency while slouched in an office chair.
Wow, so the swift walking essentially forces a physiological state that supports the intense cognitive task.
It demands a level of engagement where slouching or half-hearted mumbling becomes physically impossible. You have to master the correct physical posture first.
That makes sense.
And look, later on, when you are fluent, you can absolutely slack off and whisper casually in a cafe. But at the beginning, that full-body articulation is mandatory.
My childhood self feels incredibly vindicated right now.
Oh, yeah.
I spent years getting yelled at by teachers for bouncing my leg, pacing around the room, and just refusing to sit still in class. And now we have experts confirming that constant, swift motion is the secret to mastering complex cognitive skills.
See, your hyperactivity was merely an advanced linguistic training method waiting for its moment.
Thank you. I knew I was ahead of my time.
It just highlights how deeply our bodies and brains are linked in the learning process.
Totally. But okay, as much as I love the vindication, putting this into practice creates a massive social problem for our listeners.
The embarrassment factor.
Yeah. I mean, if you take this advice, you are outside, power walking, maintaining perfect rigid posture, and loudly shouting foreign words over an audio track, people are going to stare.
Oh, they will absolutely stare. And the fear of looking insane in public is a completely valid concern. The creator of this technique dealt with the exact same thing when he was developing the method in Berlin during the 1990s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he felt incredibly self-conscious, loudly shadowing on busy city streets.
I mean, just picture Berlin in the 90s. Just a guy power walking down the block, shouting in Arabic. I can totally see why the sources mention he eventually relocated to rural Korea.
Right, just walking for miles on empty dirt roads where absolutely nobody could hear him.
Rural isolation is undoubtedly the ideal environment for this specific exercise. But let's be real, most of our listeners are stuck in dense cities or suburbs.
Yeah, not everyone has an empty dirt road.
So the obvious workaround is just heading to the local park, right? You find a patch of grass and just pace.
You'd think a park seems logical, but the sources explicitly warn against it.
Wait, really? Why?
Surprisingly, it's not the fear of judgment that makes parks terrible. Strangers in cities generally ignore you anyway. The real issue is the obstacle course of distraction.
Oh, right. You are constantly dodging dogs on extendable leashes, erratic bicyclists, and people having picnics.
Exactly. Or worse, someone actually stops to ask what you are doing. And that breaks that intense flow state you've built up.
That would be so annoying.
You need long, uninterrupted stretches of pavement where your brain can just run on autopilot while you focus entirely on the audio.
Okay, so if we are forced to do this weird, loud routine on suburban sidewalks where our neighbors can definitely see us, there has to be a psychological silver lining to all this public embarrassment.
There actually is. And it tackles the single biggest hurdle in language learning, which is the sheer panic of being put on the spot.
Oh, the performance anxiety.
Yes, practicing in public actively builds emotional calluses. By making yourself uncomfortable daily, knowing a neighbor might hear you loudly mumbling Spanish, you inoculate yourself against the fear of sounding silly.
Oh, wow. So you are basically simulating the stress of a real-world conversation. So when you finally walk up to that Parisian barista, your heart won't be pounding out of your chest because you have already survived weeks of perceived public humiliation on your own street.
Right, the emotional preparation is a massive bonus. But the core engine of why the loud outdoor walking works mechanically is something the sources call the corrective loop.
The corrective loop. Okay, let's pull that apart. We established that shadowing forces pattern matching, but how does speaking loudly while walking supercharge that loop?
Think about the acoustics of this setup. You have pristine native audio pumping directly into your earbuds. Because you're walking swiftly and speaking loudly, your own voice is vibrating in your skull and ears, loud and clear.
Okay.
So your brain is trapped between these two overlapping audio feeds.
The master copy and my terrible vocal tracing.
Exactly. And because your voice is booming, you cannot ignore how incorrect your vowels or intonations are compared to the native speaker.
It's just right there in your face.
Right. Hearing that massive discrepancy in real time creates a continuous self-correcting feedback loop. Your brain constantly tweaks the vocal output to close the acoustic gap.
That is wild. The mechanism is so powerful that the sources know it isn't even limited to foreign languages, right?
Yeah, not at all.
Native English speakers use this exact loud shadowing technique with audiobooks to overcome dyslexia or to entirely change their own native speaking habits.
It's amazing.
You literally overwrite the neurological software controlling your vocal cords just by forcing a new, flawless audio track over your own loud voice until they merge.
It really is a profound acoustic hack for the brain. But, this does bring up a critical limitation of the technique.
Okay, what's the catch?
Well, shadowing captures the melody, the rhythm, and the flow of the living language perfectly.
But if I am shadowing a language that is flying by at 100 miles an hour, I am inevitably going to miss the microscopic details.
Exactly.
Especially what if the language uses a completely different alphabet? If I am a total beginner starting at level 0 in Tamil, Arabic, or Hindi, shadowing alone seems like a recipe for missing crucial granular nuance.
You hit the nail on the head. Shadowing captures the melody, but it completely ignores the architecture.
Right.
For those granular details, the sources introduce the counterpart technique called Scriptorium.
Scriptorium.
That sounds intense.
If shadowing is the fast physical cardio workout, Scriptorium is the slow, meticulous anchor.
Okay, so if shadowing is rapidly tracing a complex sketch to capture the broad strokes and the proportions, Scriptorium is like taking out a magnifying glass and analyzing the exact pressure of the specific brush strokes the artist used.
That is a fantastic way to conceptualize it. Scriptorium forces a complete deceleration of your learning.
How does it work?
The process requires taking a text in your target language and copying it out by hand, not typing on a keyboard, but physically drawing the letters with a pen. Wait, why does the pen matter so much? Why can't I just type it into a document on my laptop? It seems so much faster and more efficient.
Because handwriting engages tactile motor skills that typing simply bypasses. The physical act of drawing the shapes of the letters builds stronger, multisensory neural pathways.
Oh, interesting.
But the technique requires more than just blindly copying shapes. As you write, you must read the sentence aloud. You hold that specific sound in your working memory, and then you write it down letter by letter.
So you are creating a slowed-down internal echo of the language. You link the auditory sound directly to the physical movement of your hand.
Exactly. And this microscopic pace is where your brain finally has the bandwidth to notice what you completely missed while you were power walking.
Give me an example.
Well, if you were shadowing French, you will completely glide over silent letters or unpronounced word endings. Scriptorium forces you to physically write that silent E or X.
Oh, wow. So you suddenly realize the visual spelling is entirely different from the auditory pronunciation you've been practicing.
Yes. And this visual to audio mapping becomes exponentially more important when you factor in different language families. The sources highlight that language learning is not an equal playing field depending on your starting point.
Right. I mean, an English speaker learning Portuguese is tapping into a massive amount of shared linguistic architecture. You've got similar alphabets, shared Western historical roots, recognizable sentence structures.
Exactly. But an English speaker tackling Mandarin or Arabic is facing a totally alien system. You are not just swapping out vocabulary words, you are learning a fundamentally new way of categorizing reality.
Yeah, completely different logic.
Mandarin uses logographic characters, where the visual symbol often gives absolutely no phonetic clue to its pronunciation. Arabic often omits vowels entirely in its written form, relying on the reader to know the root structure.
Which explains exactly why shadowing alone fails for those languages. You cannot just trace the sound waves if the visual script doesn't map to the sounds in a phonetic way your brain inherently understands.
Scriptorium is the only way to build that bridge. Slowly drawing out an Arabic word or a Chinese character while speaking the sound aloud engages visual, tactile, and auditory processing simultaneously.
It's like a full brain workout.
It really is. It builds a physical relationship with an unfamiliar character-based script. You learn to spot the tone markers or the aspirated consonants that define the meaning.
So, do we wait until we are decent at shadowing before we start this slow handwriting process? It feels like we should get the sounds down first, right?
Actually, no. The creator of the method insists they must be done side by side from day one.
From absolute level zero.
From level zero. If you start learning a radically different language like Telugu tomorrow, there's no language too complex for this combination. You shadow to get the foreign sounds into your mouth, and you use Scriptorium to get the alien script into your hands and eyes.
Man, it really is the ultimate yin and yang of self-education. You combine the loud, fast, borderline chaotic power walking of shadowing to crush your self-consciousness and force real-time physical adaptation. And then you balance it with the slow, quiet precision of Scriptorium to solidify the grammar and physically map the spelling.
It completely removes the reliance on finding the perfect tutor and places the power entirely in the daily physical habits of the learner. All you need is a path to walk on, a notebook, and the willingness to endure the corrective loop.
That's incredibly empowering for anyone listening right now. As we wrap up this deep dive into the materials, consider the underlying mechanism we've explored today. Shadowing is fundamentally about perfectly mirroring the rhythm and physical posture of an expert, blindly overriding your own instincts until their patterns become yours.
It's a demanding but deeply transformative process.
Surely. So here's a thought to chew on. If perfectly mirroring the physical posture and rhythm of a native speaker is the secret to unlocking a foreign language, what other complex life skills could you master simply by blindly echoing the experts before you even truly understand what you're doing?
Oh, I love that. A very profound question to leave our listeners with.
If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and like.